Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of VFX Futures. I'm your host Ian Fales from beforesandafters.com. Today you're going to be jumping into a conversation I had with Julian Parry. He's the visual effects supervisor for the Amazon Prime video series, The Wheel of Time, starring Rosamund Pike. And we're actually going to be talking about something very specific that happens at the end of episode 4 of that series, involving the One Power, a thing very specific to Wheel of Time. We're going to be talking about channeling, gentling, linking. You might need to watch the series to understand exactly what those are, but Julian does explain it. And the thing that I wanted to ask him directly was, as a visual effects supervisor, how does he help concept, look dev, and come up with what an effect should be before handing it over or collaborating with the visual effects studio? In this case, it was Cinesight. And so what I did was I started asking him about where that process begins. So let's jump into that conversation right now.
When I came onto the show, that side of the One Power hadn't been resolved. And it was something when I was on The Witcher and I read the scripts and I read all of the different things that Geralt does, if you don't lock that down really early, you would just run into trouble. Because, and I'll explain. So, for example, you go on set and then the actor turns around to you and he said, he's giving a certain sign to do to close a door or to do a blast back. He's going to talk to you or via the director, or both of them will come at you and say, okay, so what happens here? If you're on set doing that, it's too late. It's way too late. So you've actually even got to R&D. It's kind of very smart to go into early R&D, talk to the directors, talk to the showrunner. As you know, on these TV shows, it's the showrunner that's the sort of most important factor, because they're the ones that are talking to all the different directors, and hopefully they're handing out all of the right information for them to have so that they can put the sequences together. So going back to the Wheel of Time, so the One Power needed, as I was reading the scripts, you're reading the scripts and you're kind of working out that the One Power's being used to do one thing, then it's being converted to do another thing, and you kind of go, right, okay, these are not individual effects. This is something that we have to kind of produce this effect and have a legend so that we can break it down, present it, show people that, this is what will happen when you turn the channeling into what we call hard air. This is what it will be like when you're manipulating water, what you're doing if you're manipulating the spirit, fire, and I think that was all 5. So it's earth, wind, fire, air. Oh no, the air is the wind, and it's spirit. There's five strands. Now, Cinesight have also just delivered to Amazon The Legend, because over Christmas, the fans were saying, "Oh, we'd love to know more about the channeling and how the channeling came about." Because I promise you, I spent weeks designing it with Cinesight, and we knew that. And Rayford mentioned that this was kind of like an energy that was drawn from around you, and then you become the channeler of the power, ergo channeling. And yeah, I just felt that it was really important to kind of nut that out and design it so that we could go to the directors on the other episodes and say, look, this is what this will look like. This is how it performs. You can also, you're working with your DOP and your production designer, and they need to know that, do we need to build anything for this? And it's like, no, you don't. And do we need interactive light? And it's like, yes, you do. But then again, channeling doesn't really emit light. It's kind of organic and ethereal. But I then started to look at deep space reference that was available on the World Wide Web. And I was seeing that there was this beautiful nebulas that obviously NASA and those people who've got the technology are photographing. And I felt that was something that we could draw on. And my work has always been grounded in reality. I mean, if you can't explain to somebody the physics of what you're doing, it just gets lost in rambling. It's really important to the filmmakers to be able to give them a fuzzy logic, as I like to call it. And Rafe, if you look at some of the interviews that Rafe has done, he often refers to the fact that, yeah, the guys, designed channeling, and they even did a legend which shows the earth, wind, fire, water, and spirit as the individual channeling elements. And then I wanted to work out what happened when you combined them, what their looks were when you combined fire and water. Not that you would ever do that, because that would extinguish the channeling, but you might use fire on its own, water on its own, air, earth, and combinations of those that you like, air and earth, for example, or air and water. Because, for example, in that episode 2, it's actually water and air that Moraine is channeling to make the whirlpool that sinks the ferry. So yes, we did go into R&D on the channeling.
Well, one of the interesting things I always think about and talk to soups about with what I'll call magical effects, but it's not what I really mean here for Wheel of Time, is yes, I can perfectly understand how an art director or concept artist can deliver a still frame of what this looks like, and that can totally be used as reference and inform what the visual effects studio does. But what some soups have told me is there's always a very tricky part of things like this, because those effects, of course, tend to be simulations done in Houdini, typically. And I'm very curious about how you ended up working with Cinesight in just look deving it and doing enough to show the showrunner and directors, but then realizing that there's a final shot aspect to it.
Yeah, and that was made all the more complex by our COVID pandemic that we went through, because obviously we were all isolated.
Sure.
Just as we're doing now, sure. This is how the creative briefs were taking place with Cinesight. So to answer your question, Cinesight were engaged. They'd been in a period of R&D for a while, and they were struggling. And it was only because of what you just said. It's like, you've got, here's a drawing, but where's the motion graphic? And as I said earlier, when when you're reading the scripts and you're thinking, I could design something really cool here, but it's actually needed in 4 scripts later, and it's not going to work the same. So with all the knowledge that I had of the whole season, I could sit with Cinesight, say, hi, guys. We just worked together, obviously, on The Witcher. Got a great working relationship with them. And we just got under the hood. I said to Rafe, can you give me a week to talk to the teams there, work with what we have? My background is also art direction. I've been lucky enough to have that design background, which has helped me immensely. on projects as complex as this. Because what I think those other soups had probably said is that, the production designer and the art department who you're really relying on giving you all of these concepts sometimes just get bogged down in everything that they're doing. And when it comes time to give you the information you require, they don't. It's like, I'm sorry, guys, we don't have time. Can we just leave this with you? And it's like, okay. I mean, actually, I never panic because I actually prefer it that way. I want to take it away, and we can manage the concept artists and anything other that we need to do. So once we decided, I said to them, the channeling that I'm seeing at the moment is not going to work for the whole season. We need to break it down. We need a legend that everyone can understand, a philosophy that everyone can understand, and we can move forward with this. We did that as artwork initially, broke it down. I think I showed the guys a couple of references. We're in a visual industry, so very hard not to say to somebody, hey, look at this little video clip that I've seen, or look at this, and do you see the way that this is flowing in this commercial, or whatever it might be? But you show them something, you give the guys a bit of a clue. Then, as you say, you're ultimately using a proprietary software, which then needs to be kind of manipulated, broken to make it work. Sometimes the settings within the simulations are turnkey. In Houdini, you can set up a blast, and you just dial that blast into the level that you want, and you put the coloration on it you want, and bingo, you're there. But other times you're also dealing with that vendor, and in this case CineSite, their power to then be also able to get in under the hood of, say, their software and tweak it even more, and take it into, I guess we hear that terminology, rewriting the script or doing something different that will give us ultimately the final look.
What did you settle on with CineSite? And I guess you're saying it depended on the episode and what was happening, but maybe in this episode 4 battle, what did channeling need to do and look like?
Well, there was such the strange thing is, get your head around this. The actors, and I think Rosamund has said this. Rosamund said, I think on one interview, that she choreographed her channeling so that you could almost do a version where you didn't need visual effects.
Right.
So the fact that she's doing all of the, for let's call it the visual yoga techniques.
Yeah.
There is a version in Rosamund's world where you probably didn't need to see anything, because I think a lot of the book people as well were, they were very happy to see the channeling, because when you read the books, you get your own take on the channeling. So there was a version there where, okay, we could actually edit and put this together with no VFX. I mean, I would probably like to see that version and see if it actually can be pulled off. It probably can be. But within the episode 4 battle, as you can see there, the big story point is the fact that he's the baddie. Logain is more powerful than any of the ladies individually. So part of the script and the story there was that the Aes Sedai will come together, will link, as in that's the terminology for what they were doing. They would link their power, use Leandrin as the amplifying core, and therefore, and holding Logain sort of up in the air to the point where there was enough power to sort of rip him open and gentle him, which is as the book, as they refer to it, and bring him devoid of his powers. So, as you can understand, when you read that episode, when you're reading that script, and you're thinking, okay, this needs to be visual storytelling, and if you look at the sequence, it's all there. The drama is in also what they are doing, and the way that they link, and that was, I can't lie, it was very problematic because you've got what's on the script page, and then you've got what the actors are doing, and they're all you can see they're all into what they're doing. They're sort of really delivering the performances, and visual effects just needed to really underpin it and support it. But we couldn't do, it would be totally wrong to do sort of slow moving channeling coming in, especially when these ladies are giving the severities of their performances. I guess that those performances were the cues that we worked to. So when you see one of the other ladies at the back, she runs in and she's immediately noticing what's taking place. She's pulling the power in and throwing it forward, and that's linking to the other Aes Sedai who are standing closer to Leandrin. So you can see that their performance is slightly more subtle. They just cross their arms, and they're sort of standing there passively around what you might call the ring, and they are drawing the energy from around them. So therefore you have the weaves that are coming into their bodies. We worked out that there should be an amplification. So you've got maybe 4 weaves coming into the Aes Sedai individual, and 2 are going to come out. So you're getting this metaphorically visual understanding of what's taking place. And I think as that sequence moves on, you have Leandrin focus the energy towards Logain, and the powers and the timings are all then set out from the editorial beats and the performances, and that's how we built that particular. Up to that point, Logain, as you know, he starts to rise up. We needed it to feel as though the energy was flooding into him. So again, there you can see that's coming across visually quite well. And then Rafe wanted him to be gentled. And this goes back to your question about, how do you come up with this stuff? And you'd say to Rafe, what is gentled? And he says things like, well, he's basically getting the spirit ripped out of him. And for me, that was a cue to say, okay, this needs to be violent. And that particular moment when this spirit is ripped out of him was shot at high speed, and I think I've been around filmmaking for many years now, and I know when I see certain things that it's a cue for a certain design or a certain speed or a certain effect. And this needed to be, it just couldn't be a puff of, just a bit puff of smoke, because everything that the actor's doing there is just big. So that's why we went for, I called it a blood eagle.
I was going to say it looked like black angel wings very quickly, but I can see
black angel wings.
I can see the eagle reference, absolutely.
Yeah, and as you know, that would hark back to my Vikings days, and and Rafe, and we concepted it for Rafe. And I said to him, look, one of the most violent things I've ever seen is a blood eagle. And that was all it was about, the Vikings tearing the spirit out of an individual. And I thought, okay, maybe if we do a frontal version of this, that's quite a powerful graphic. And, CineSight turned that particular moment of gentling out to really great effect. And I think Rafe was very happy with what he saw there. And that's how we ended up with it.
Julian, you just did a great job explaining the whole sequence just by talking that way. That was so good. But there's one thing that I didn't ask you about, and it goes back to what the DOP and production designer asking what had to happen on set. Did you end up coming up with, for weaving and channeling, any kind of interactive light or other interaction? Was that necessary?
Yes and no, because it depended on the sequence itself. So if you watch the battle sequence in the cave of episode 4, there is no interactive light, or if it is there, it's very subtle. As the supervisor, you have to make a choice on your auxiliary effects, because your auxiliary effects can actually be more of a headache than the good they can do for you. Now, interactive light is obviously, it's been a buzzword for many years, because obviously interactive light sets the characters or the effects into the room. If I have a glowing orb here right now, we can make this glow, but it's not going to affect the back walls, and it's not going to do the interaction levels that we're after to really make people believe that orb's in the room. But if this is a magic orb that is just an orb and it doesn't cast any shadows or any interactive light, is that a bad thing? And the answer is, it's not a bad thing. So with the channeling generally, it's there as an ethereal organicness that doesn't really need interactive lighting. And what we found was that if we needed interactive lighting, we could actually do a sort of our own version, a VFX overlay of enhanced light. Unless it was something where we felt this really needs to light up the individual, then we will just stay away from interactive lighting. Because one of the things with television, and this is a conversation for another day, is that our days on set are very limited. And I know movies are the same. Movies have budgets and schedules they've got to keep to, but television is, I swear, is twice as bad. If I have to make choices for the work to look good, for the production to meet their schedule, and everyone to get not running into overtime, and whether everyone wants to go home on the weekend, the last thing they need is for me to say we're doing 4 hours of overtime because I need a set with interactive lighting. But as you will see in episode 8, when the ladies do the same thing there, when they link, again, another very powerful moment that we felt, it was at night. We needed that sequence was actually scripted for day, but Kieran Donnelly and I, we looked at the channeling and all of the legends that we had, and I said to Kieran, channeling looks fantastic at night, and he said, I'm going to pitch it all at night. And I think we did the right thing, because it wasn't that much of a problem, because we just went from the Trollocs in the gap, dusk comes, we go into night, all's good. And it gave Kieran, for episode 8, that visual build up as well, where the ladies would come and link, Amelisa, as you know from the episode, she really does take on the power, and we had to get that kind of lightning storm going. And it dawned on Rafe that if he was going to kill 15,000 Trollocs, it could go on for quite some time. So we needed to also reduce the amount of screen time down. And that also played into the fact that if we went for night shooting, doing the big one power explosion, knocking all the Trollocs out, would kind of speed things up and tell the same story. So yes, interactive lighting where it was needed, not where it wasn't.
And that was my conversation with Julian Parry, the visual effects supervisor of Amazon Prime Video's The Wheel of Time. Thanks so much, Julian, for diving into that aspect of being a visual effects supervisor on one of these streaming series. I always enjoy trying to find a different angle to talk about, perhaps than just the technical way a certain effect was achieved. But in this case, I thought the concepts for this effect and also the way Cinesight handled the final look was so fantastic. So thank you, Julian, and thanks everyone for listening to VFX Futures. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.